Welcome back, Nerglings. Today we're going to be taking a look at something that everyone should have in their armies. That's right, the baggage train. But before we start, be sure to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss an update. Alright lads, what the hell is a baggage train? A baggage or supply train is a cart or group of carts that make up the logistic tail of an army group. In military contexts, the baggage train provides materiel for the associated combat forces when in the field. When focused on provision of field artillery and its ammunition, it may be termed an artillery train. For sieges, the addition of siege engines to an artillery train is called a siege train. These military terms predate and do not imply a railway train, although railways are often employed for modern logistics and can include armoured trains. For armies, the baggage is usually referred to forces employing wagons, horses, mules, oxen, camels or even elephants. These can still be useful when difficult weather or topography limits use of other larger forms of transport such as ships. So this fine example is from Footsore Miniatures and is a mix of metal characters sitting on a resin 3D printed wagon, pulled by a couple of lovely cast metal horses. They are mounted on a 3mm thick laser cut MDF base. I will be using a variety of paints on the thing, starting off with an undercoat of acrylic burnt umber ink, which gives a nice dark base coat upon which to build up different colours and highlights. Now I'm also using a few acrylic colours from my local hobby store. To pick out some detail, I will be using enamels which have a very high opacity. So things like cloaks and tunics, which need to be different colours, are perfect for this. Finally, I'll be using my old favourite Army Painter Quick Shade, which will give the finished miniature a protective polyurethane coat and a wash at the same time, which will give it a dark and murky, albeit glossy finish. The colour for the base is a proxy goblin green in the form of all green from Rust-Oleum, rather appropriately a tough garden paint, whilst the mud effect on the base will be a mixture of wood filler and various browns. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get on to the good stuff. In the ancient Macedonian army, Philip II of Macedon and his son, Alexander the Great, set rules for the baggage train. Carts were mostly banned, except for carrying important items like siege engines, tents, or acting as ambulances. They believed carts would slow down the army and cause issues in rough terrain. Soldiers, servants, and pack animals carried supplies instead. Horses and mules were the main pack animals, with camels added after the conquest of Egypt. Oxen and ox carts were avoided due to their slower pace and less endurance compared to horses and mules. The Roman legionary, on the other hand, carried his personal belongings on a pole while marching. Tents, equipment, and supplies were transported separately by mules and wagons controlled by camp servants. Like many other European armies during the time, the Russian army mainly used civilian contract drivers for transportation and supply services. But after reforms in 1760, they established siege train parks to provide wagons and support for siege artillery. In 1800 France, an artillery train was created with permanently enlisted and uniformed drivers under military discipline. The success of this corps led to a similar regimental wagon train being created by Napoleon in 1806 to provide transport and supply services for his Imperial Guard. Wagon train battalions were created in 1811 to standardise existing supply arrangements for the army as a whole. Until the mid-19th century, the British Army had relied primarily on hired civilian drivers to provide transport services as needed. A Royal Wagon Train had been created in 1802 to ensure logistic support, but it had been downsized after 1815 and disbanded in 1832. The ad hoc employment of non-disciplined contract workers had clear limitations, and during the Crimean War, a permanent organisation, the Land Transport Corps, was created as an integral part of the regular army, to be renamed as the Military Train in 1856 and in 1888 as the Army Service Corps. So to add some more analytical chutzpah to our video, let's take a look at some statistics from the American Civil War and compare them to our own rule systems. Per 1,000 men, supply wagon ratio. Army of the Potomac, 1862, 29 to 1,000. Jackson's Valley Campaign, 1862, 7 per 1,000. Army of Northern Virginia, 1863, 28 per 1,000. Army of the Potomac, 1864, 36 per 1,000. Sherman's March to the Sea, 1864, 40 per 1,000. So, if you were to have an army of 100 miniatures, using the ratios here, you might be pretty accurate in using anything from 1 to 4 wagons in your baggage train for a typical 2,000 point army. But why a baggage train? Well, it really should be obvious why an army should need supplies, but to elaborate on the premise of my army specifically having a baggage train, I simply like the look of them. But also, they are a great way to give your army a more grounded and realistic look. When we are talking Stillmania, we want realism almost to the point of historical pedantry, which is no bad thing, I might add. We want our forces to look and feel like living and breathing, put upon and brave. With that in mind, you'll notice all manner of little tidbits to tickle your fancy when looking at the army. Horses will carry everything a knight will need to sleep in the field. The baggage train has a chest of gold to pay off local dignitaries, bribe local bandits for passage if the knights simply can't be bothered trampling them, or even hiring mercenaries to assist in particularly dangerous scenarios. Everything is covered in blood or mud, as you might expect from an expeditionary force slogging across the wastes and backwaters. Who joins a baggage train? Well, anyone can join a baggage train, but within a battle, I would expect the characters and footmen to be at the front line, leaving any servants or guards to attend the baggage for realism. The train itself has a single armed guard with a crossbow, but alongside this, I envisage probably dedicating at least a few archers to its protection too. What good would a pile of materiel be if a sneaky attack from a flank or rear action could destroy, or even worse, pilfer my troops' hard-earned goods? If the baggage needs to be left unattended, I thought it would be a good idea to also have an agile group of mounted sergeants to respond to any shenanigans towards the rear of the army. This flexible formation will be able to quickly react to any flanking manoeuvres and free up the heavy knights to do their business on the front line. Where would you place it in a force? The baggage, unless being played within a specific scenario, will traditionally be placed far to the rear of the army, protected by depth and a smattering of footmen, only if being used for an important task such as resupplying an artillery line or a dug-in infantry section might it be used closer to the forward line of enemy troops. Of course, I won't be placing it alongside the knights or men-at-arms in a battle lineup, as that would simply be asking for it to be destroyed in record time. Nuance is the key, and nuanced shall my placement be. When do you field a baggage train? The baggage train could be used in a variety of ways, as a scenario objective in either attack or defense, a rearguard action where cavalry pester the baggage and its attending footmen in an attempt to escape, as mentioned earlier in resupplying troops, or simply moving supplies from battle to battle, or town to town. The possibilities really are endless and help add that historical realism to your scenarios. Perhaps they could be used with greater effect in campaigns, where things such as logistics are simulated and inform the starting states of forces later down the line. For instance, the successful interdiction of a baggage train by a force might give the owners less arrows, cannonballs, or even food than might be expected. This would surely impact on morale over the coming games. How do you field a baggage train? Well, technically speaking, the baggage train does have its own statistics and can count towards victory points for it remaining or being removed from play. As such, it should be protected, as otherwise it is easy pickings for a canny adversary to pick off with any number of skirmishers, flyers, or roaming light cavalry. So, what have we learned during our time with the unsung logistical heroes of our battles? Baggage trains add an important historical level of realism to our games and scenarios. They can provide a great objective during a game, and look pretty cool in doing so. Finally, and crucially, they provide the supplies that your army needs whilst waging its campaigns. With that in mind, thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some more in the series. Au revoir, mon ami.